Hello, everyone. More than halfway done. I'm on hour 14 of my 24 in 24 for Sam's challenge, where every hour on the hour I am either giving a talk or speaking to lovely people like Sarah here about a topic on mental health and things like that to highlight what we do at Samaritans, which is 24/7, 365 days a year. We are there for our callers who might be feeling suicidal, going through rough time in their life, and giving them space to talk about things that matter. And that's what I'm doing here, um, to highlight some of the things that we need to talk about. So, I've had quite a lot of conversations since midnight already, many of them with friends. And what was really interesting was a lot of them shared stories and really vulnerable parts to their journey that I have never ever known if it wasn't for this space to talk. So, what I would like to do is to show you that it is possible to create that space, even if it's with somebody else, to listen, to share, and make things easier for us, kind of like to navigate life. Life is difficult and messy and tough, and it's only when we have the support of people around that we can do it. And to tell her story, we've got Sarah, who's not doing a small job, she's doing a big job, and she's doing it in such a magnificent way. Sarah, how are you?
I'm really well, thanks, Pay, and really excited to be part of this. A lot of what I talk about is the Salesforce community, but increasingly a lot of what I'm really passionate about in my work and what hopefully we're going to talk a little bit about, and it's a really big part of my story, is work-life boundaries and creating a culture where people can thrive at work. I guess just a quick introduction. So, like I said, I do a pretty full-on job. So I'm the CEO at a Salesforce consultancy. We're a consultancy of around 35 people based in the UK. And professional services, but consultancy in general, I think gets a really bad rap for workplace culture and overwork, and rates of burnout and people moving on from roles are really high. So it's something that I'm really passionate about, is making sure that people, I love being a consultant, I've always loved being a consultant, but I think you have to really work to create an environment where people can love doing it for longer than a couple of years.
Definitely. So, tell us a little bit about your story in terms of, I know you've been in the tech space for quite a while. How, did you? I think I have been in consulting for a long time, and it's always been a very hustle culture.
Mhm.
It's very much evenings, weekends are expected. And I was just talking to someone else about discovery and what the schedule was like. And I remember being in discoveries, 6 hour discoveries a day. So that means 3 hours before lunch, 3 hours after lunch, and then you do your write ups at night. And it was just insane. It was expected, and I was very lucky. I didn't totally burn out, and I don't know how I kind of survived, but that was how it has always been for me. And what's really interesting was when I was at Capgemini, and this was 2016 thereabouts, and we were given graduates. One of the things that we were told, you can't make them do overtime, and you can't ask too much of them, and they need a space, and they need their lunch, and so on and so forth. And at that time, I can tell you that I was thinking, well, that's not how consultancies work. If you want to work here, you have to expect to put in the graph. I know that wasn't a super healthy mindset. But kind of like tell me about your journey and how you got to where you are today. It's almost impossible, I would say. I don't know very many. I know one CEO who works part time, and she's you.
um, yeah, no, I do work part time, and actually my background into the role, I think, so I've been with Nebula for over 10 years, and that's my kind of only experience of consulting as well. So I think, I haven't had that big four consulting experience of the all night. And I think actually, one of the things that hopefully I can talk a little bit about is how we've prevented that becoming part of our culture. So I came into the world of Salesforce from a marketing background. So that was my first job out of university, was marketing, and I was an end user of Exact Target, as it was at the time, and of Salesforce. I was working at an events company, and that's what we used. And then I went off and did another marketing role. And then someone I'd worked with previously had set up a consultancy in the meantime and came back and said, look, we're wanting to branch out into marketing automation. Do you want to come and do this for us? So I had never done consulting, and I'd never done Pardot before, still repping Pardot. But then it was very much, I guess my experience was very much a learn on the job. No one had done this before. I spent the first 3 weeks head down, just learning the platform, learning the training off by heart. And then I was off out, and I think I delivered my first on-site implementation and training about 6 weeks into the job.
Mm.
So it was a think and learn on your feet kind of job. And I didn't mind that. I like that kind of environment. So that was really good for me. And there was a lot of juggling, lots of different projects at a time. But I think one of the things that we always did, and there were days when I worked long hours, but we didn't do the working evenings and weekends as standard. And I think that was something that we'd always kind of agreed. At that point, I didn't have too much responsibility in my life. I was in my 20s and lived in London, and so I could have done that. But we didn't take that approach. We didn't need to take that approach. And I think that was a kind of really conscious effort then to safeguard that as we built the organization and scaled and added more people to it, to not put that kind of pressure on people either. So I guess before I get kind of into that side of things, just how I got to where I am today. So yeah, I was a consultant for and kind of built out the marketing consulting team at Nebula for about 5 years. And then I went off to have my first child. And when I returned from maternity leave, that was quite difficult to re-find my place and reset boundaries. And that was when I first went part-time. So came back to the organization at first 3 days a week and then 4 days a week. And since then, I've never gone back to full time. I liked having my 4 days a week. And that was, I think, when it started being really more important to really put in place those work-life boundaries and expectations. And then I had another child as well, another maternity leave, and again have come back part-time, and even now I'm part-time, so I still don't work a full week, and I think that in itself is quite challenging. People have actually, when I took on my current role of CEO about a year ago, one of the questions I got was, "Oh, does that mean you're going full-time now?" My answer was no, because I don't need to. I know I can do my job in the time I have. But I think it's really difficult for people who don't have good work-life boundaries to understand how you can in a role that's demanding. And I think it was one of the questions I got asked at London's Calling as well when I did my talk about leadership. Someone said, is it possible to have a work-life balance when you're in a leadership role? And I guess the assumption comes with that you only get to be good at your job if you put in the graft. You were talking about this, that you get seen in big companies by putting in the hours, by being there all the time. But I think what I found is that doesn't necessarily mean you're doing your best work. And a lot of where work-life boundaries fall down for people, I think they struggle to be part-time, is not necessarily. There is sort of a I guess, a responsibility of other people to be respectful of your time and your calendar. But I think the primary responsibility does lie with you as the person who is part-time to be part-time yourself, because it would be really easy for me to, and sometimes I try really hard not to, but it would have been really easy when I came back from my first maternity leave to still answer all my emails on a Friday and to still be like, oh yeah, I'll just take that call. It's fine. And even if I could, it was really important that I set the expectation with myself and with others to say, no, I'm not available on Fridays, and to push back to customers. And it was really a little bit awkward, and you have to get used to it. If someone says, oh, how about Friday for an important customer call? And you have to have the strength to say, I don't work on Fridays, but I'd be happy to work. Let's look at a time on Monday. And I think there are so many times where we want to be flexible and we want to please people and we want to do a really good job that we think saying yes is the right way to do it. But actually saying no, and you've got to be disciplined yourself before others. Others are not going to respect your work-life boundary if you don't respect it yourself. And that's the thing that I've learned massively, staying part-time. And there was a point, when I was sort of looking at it was sort of having conversations with people about other roles post maternity leave, and there were companies that said, "Oh, we think you'd be really great at this job, but there's no 4 days a week. That doesn't exist." And I was like, "Well, that's a non-negotiable for me." And I think it is. People don't think it's possible to do these kind of jobs in a part-time context, but it absolutely is. And I'd be happy to convince anyone that you can be in a leadership role 4 days a week.
I got two questions. The
Yep.
first one is a bit cheeky. When you say 4 days a week, are you saying actual 4 days a week, or are you doing 5 days work in 4 days and just making it longer?
No, I work 4 days a week. Actually, as of the last 6 months, since my son's been at school, I've been doing 4.5 days. But yeah, I'm contracted for about 7 years. I was contracted at 80% time, 80% salary as well. And now I'm on 90%, but still, every week in my diary, I have those 4 hours are blocked out, auto declines on my meetings. So yeah, it is genuinely shorter hours.
Okay. So my next question is for lots of people who are listening in. Does it not require the organization to actually have that culture? So one of the things that I hear is that we've got very talented people, but they can only work part time. They have other commitments, but it is not easy to find an organization that by design create a culture of work life balance.
Yes, I do think there does need to be buy-in, and I think a lot of the reason that many organisations don't have this as a part of their culture is that there is this misconception that people on fewer hours will not be as committed, they won't be as productive, they won't be as willing to be flexible. And sometimes there are needs, people have commitments, like you said, where they need to be in certain places at certain times, and there are kind of red lines with work-life boundaries. But there is also that element of flexibility. And I think people who are willing to offer up some level of flexibility for themselves and say, look, I can do this 3 or 4 or however many days or hours a week. Generally, they're probably the people who are trying to balance other stuff and are probably better at balancing, prioritizing, and committing to things than others anyway. So I do think that there does need to be buy-in from the workplace and the organization, which can be difficult if there are some of these, I guess, beliefs that, flexible work means less work, or that flexible work, they're not going to be willing to put in the hard graft, or they're not going to be as committed, which really isn't the case. And I think the more people who can prove that part-time work or flexible work is a good thing, that is helping to change the narrative. And I do think things like the move to hybrid environments and the move to remote working and things have challenged some of the beliefs about having to be present in an office or a physical space. And so I guess the kind of extension for that and the next natural step is to challenge some of the, hours of working, and make sure that people have that in place. Um, and it is a challenge with big organizations. Like I said, there are some organizations where you mention 4 days a week and they go, no precedent for that. This is a full-time role and that's it. And so I think, they are going to be the ones who increasingly miss out on talent. And I think it is going to take, it's going to be a slow shift, but it has to be one that is built into the culture of organizations.
So share a little bit about how your organization bakes in work-life balance for, all your staff.
So I think there are some kind of, I guess, practical things that we do, actual actions and behaviours, and then the culture, the conversational side of it. And I think the kind of conversational side of it, the idea of flexibility and things like that, is one that companies can do quite easily. And they can say, yes, we're very flexible. We want everyone to have good work-life balance. You can talk the talk. But actually putting it into practice and being, I kind of alluded to the idea of being quite disciplined with it. That takes hard work and it doesn't happen overnight. And I think that's the bit that most organizations don't do. So just, I guess, a couple of examples of the things that we do. So for example, everyone has their working hours, and all appointments are Google Calendars are all open at work. So within our organization, everyone can see everyone else's calendars. And it's very normal for people to have time booked out. Most people have their lunch break booked out. People will have focus time booked out for learning and development, for example. So it's not just work-life balance as in home, but personal development balance as well, I think is really important in consulting when everything's about billable hours. So we have completely open Google Calendars. It's very normal for a large chunk of the organization. We have school-age kids, and you'll see quite a lot of people at 3 p.m. have school pickup in their diary. And that's that. We don't hide it. We encourage people to be open about it and to talk about it. And that's something I think you do need to lead with. So, I'd said about me pushing back on things. And if people see leadership saying, oh no, I'm really sorry. We had an example this week. One of our leaders had to take his dog to the vet for an emergency appointment. And so we rescheduled something around that. Or he said, I've written up some notes and this is my input, but I'm not going to be able to attend this call. And people seeing practically that those kind of things are accepted and okay means others feel more comfortable to do it as well. Because if leadership is saying, yes, be flexible, live your best life, have this work-life balance, but then they aren't living that themselves, people are not going to feel confident in being the only one in the business who goes, oh, actually, I've got to go pick my kid up from school. So it's got to be everywhere and everything and very transparent.
That is I have a feeling that a lot of people who are listening to this might think, oh, do you have any openings right now? So do many of your team go part-time? Are they part-time or are they full-time?
I'd say the majority of the organisation are full-time, but we have people who work sort of slightly different hours. Some people start a little bit earlier. I'd say that we have a large degree of flexibility. We are a customer-facing organisation, so there does need to be, people need to be available during times that customers are available. But I think there's, the majority of our customers are EMEA, but we do work with some customers elsewhere in the globe as well. And I think the time zone flexibility part of it can be really difficult to balance as well. So, and there was one instance where a customer, a really big customer, it was potentially one of our biggest contracts, and they were like, we want 24-hour support. And I was like, no. And they were like, yeah, but we'll pay a retainer for it, and we'll pay time and a half for the late shift. And I was like, no, I'm not putting my staff on like call for your tickets at 3 a.m. We don't work like that. They're like, oh, well, we're going to have to look at someone who will, blah, blah, blah. How about we just do these hours? And we had this real back and forth. And I think it does take some bravery to say to a huge organization,
Mm.
I'm not doing that. And I'm not making my people work at 3 a.m. answering your tickets. And so I think that's something that if you need flexible work, you need to have your manager or a leader, someone who can advocate for you and help protect your boundaries as well as just you. And that's what we try and do for our people as well is, you know, some of our team, I said that most people work full time, but some flexible hours. And there are some people who we know they're like, look, between the hours of 3 and 7, I'm out of here because I'm looking after my kids. But it works for me to log back on at that point and do a couple of hours of work. So we know they're likely to be doing things late. But what we ask people to do in those scenarios is if you're got emails to send, Slacks to send, schedule them so that others receive them at 9 a.m, not 9 at night. And I think those kind of conversations and those practices allow people to work flexibly without imposing it on other people as much or making other people. I think sometimes there's that guilt of so and so is working so late at night and I'm not doing that and they're going to be seen as doing so much more work than me. So it's being mindful of your impact on others as well as part of this like flexible work.
Must have taken a lot of courage to say no to the customer. Did you? I can't think of anyone else who would do that, especially one as small as you. You know.
Yeah, but it was one where I guess the alternative was I couldn't imagine myself having a conversation with someone on my team and saying, are you happy to be on call for a customer all night on this night? Like, what else are they going to do? And, you know, I think there's some decisions that you make. And one of the things that, you know, I think we were, that I kind of put in the topics here was living your values at work and knowing what guides your decision making and kind of having some, I think it was something you said at the last Women in Tech about how does it feel in your body and your mind and your soul. And there are some decisions like this particular one about providing 24-hour support where I was like, okay, in my mind, practically it doesn't make sense anyway. We're a UK-based team. It makes no sense. But also in my soul, it makes me feel very unhappy. So I had to, it was difficult to find the words to say it to somebody in a large organization in a way that they understood and to push back. But it wasn't hard to know that that was the right decision.
I like that very much. I was just thinking that I know quite a few CEOs who would say yes and then hire an offshore team or find a way to make it work. It sounds like that wasn't even something that you would contemplate.
I think there are certain things. I think that's it's actually a really really good point and something we talk about quite a lot at Nebula. Like we are a small organization, and so sometimes things come to us that are slightly outside of our skill set or like that are not in an area that we usually work or a way that we usually work. And there is always this decision point of, you know, are we capable of this? If not, can we find a way to be capable of this? And one of the things that we embed really heavily is this in line with our values, because, you know, we've been around quite a long time and most of our business is reputational, comes from referrals, it's repeat business. We have a really strong customer base of repeat customers. So one new customer in a project area that we're going to do a terrible job in, that's way that value of that contract is not worth it for us risking our reputation with the other 80% of our customers who need to know that we are reliable and we do a really good job and we have quality and we keep our consultants and they stay with us and we have continuity. So you kind of have to balance up some of these, and those decision points do come to us, and we have over the years. It's always really hard to do, but sometimes you do have to turn things away because sometimes you're like, yeah, we can make that work. We can make that work. But you have to make a decision of who's this impacting And is this actually damaging what we've built here? Like, what's more important to us? Is it the long-term future of the organization? Is it the place that people come and do their best work? Are people going to be able to do their best work on this project? And if the answer to some of those things is no, sometimes you have to make the hard decision. And it is, nobody likes turning down revenue, right? It's a horrible thing to have to do, but sometimes actually the value of that is greater than just the contract on that particular day.
What are the Nebula values?
So the Nebula values, we have 4. We have trust, flexibility, collaboration, and empowerment. And those we actually went through an exercise to come up with those values. I think it must have been about 7 years ago. And that was a really interesting exercise to kind of try and name the culture of a business that had been around for, I don't know, like 4 or 5 years prior. And we kind of all had this sense of what's the Nebula culture. We all kind of knew implicitly what it was to be Nebula, but we didn't have it written down. So we went through this exercise and we came up with our 4 values. And I think one of the things that a lot of organizations do is that's where they stop. They then get them printed, they put them on the wall, and they go, these are our values. But I think in my experience, the point now, when we have new people who've been with us 1 or 2 years and they go, God, one of the things about Nebula is you really live by your values. And there was a time where that wasn't the case, because when we just came up with the 4 words, it became a bit of a running joke that in every company meeting, I would stand up at the front and I'd point to someone, I go, name a value, name a value, name a value. And I did that in every company meeting for about a year until eventually everyone knew what all 4 values were. So it wasn't just a case that we came up with them and then everyone magically knew them and lived by them, and wasn't it brilliant? It took quite a lot of badgering, and it was a bit, why is she doing this again? For quite a long time. But now everyone in the organization knows them. We have them as emojis in Slack. We have them built into all of our presentations, all of our hiring decisions, all of our even when we're setting expectations with customers of how they might work with us, when we're onboarding new members of staff, when we're making decisions, even about like what Salesforce products to work with, everyone has these 4 core values that they can use. I think that really helps. But it's kind of like the work-life boundaries. You have to actually work at it. It doesn't just magically happen that you have a good culture.
So what was it? It was flexibility, collaboration, trust.
Yeah, and empowerment.
Empowerment.
Yeah.
Give me an example when you have had to, no, this is not the right word. When you live the values of empowerment.
So all of our values kind of work 2 ways. They work with our customers and they work internally. So empowerment with our customers is all around us creating, and this is how we build and do all of our projects, is our aim is to get our customers to a place where they are the owners of their systems and their solutions. So all of it's little things like choosing between using Apex and custom metadata, for example. So we make those decisions based on what is the customer going to be able to maintain long term? Are they going to be able to scale this long term? Who in their organization is going to be looking after this? What are they likely to throw at it data wise? And making those decisions about how to build with the idea that it should be about them being able to do their jobs better, not about them having to come back to us because they changed the price of one of their things. And so that's an example of empowerment, I guess, externally. Internally, I think the empowerment value, so we have a head of L&D internally, and we run a lot of, I think, internal L&D sessions that around not just the technical side, certifications, but soft skills as well. So things like how to run effective meetings, how to give and receive feedback, how to even manage your calendar, manage your diary. And I think those are the kind of things where we want our teams to be self-sufficient, to be able to do their best work. And we think that investing in their L&D time is one of the best ways that we can do that.
Amazing. Thank you. Just before we close up,
Yep.
So a small self-service practice partner is growing, and they're looking to create values, especially around work-life balance and culture. What are the top three things that they should think about and focus on?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think one of the key things is, I think that if you're quite small, this is easier to do. But I think in whatever size you are, you need to do this, is bring everyone into it, bring the organization into it, your values and your culture. Although often it's leadership who will write that up and present it in a meeting, it can't just be a leadership initiative. It has to come from everyone who works there. And, whatever format that takes, if it's a workshop or a survey or something like that, find out what people actually value about being at your organization. What does that mean to you? Look at your CSATs, look at your customer feedback. What are the words that come out most often? And that will give you a guide to what your culture and your values are. Actually distilling those into discrete words, that's a bit of marketing, a bit of content, but the essence of what that culture is, it can't just come from leadership. It's got to come from everyone. So that's a really big tip. Second one is, you got to stick with it. This is not a one-time exercise. This is something you've got to think, like, for the next 12 months, how am I going to make these values or this culture actually in the organization, in the things that we do? The trusted element of having open Google calendars and people respecting what's in those calendars. Are you actually making sure that your new hires know what your values are? Do you tell them about it? How have you planned that into your processes? So I think planning for the follow through is really key for making it stick. Otherwise, they are just words on the wall. And that's nice, but it's not meaningful. And then third tip, I would say, is, use them in decision making. Actually use them consciously and explicitly in decision making. And encourage your teams to do it as well. I think a lot of workplace culture is about creating common language so that people can talk to each other in a way they understand, and using these values to say, okay, well, I think we do need to do this because flexibility is one of our values and we need to be flexible here. Or, this approach, we're not empowering people here. What we're doing is we're stifling them. We're not empowering them to do their best work. And using that language, use it to make decisions. And one of the things that's really, really good for is it helps reduce people getting blindsided, because at everyone's heart, they kind of know what decision's going to happen because they know what the culture is, they know what the values are. So people don't get sideswiped by things. So people feel more comfortable at work and, being your customer and things like that. So those, I think, would be my 3 tips.
Very nice, very nice. It just, kind of like comes together quite nicely. Before I let you go, just very quickly. So thank you everyone who have watched this one. I thought that this was a very good session. Nebula is quite a unique partner. I've worked with so many in how you do things. So I hope everyone who's been able to watch has got something to take away from it. In the meantime, please, if you haven't yet donated, can you donate? Wherever, here, the QR code is here. Please donate, and I hope you found it valuable and that you'll stick around. We've got quite a few more before midnight tonight. So thank you so much, Sarah, for coming on and sharing your experience and your wisdom with everyone.
Thank you so much for having me on, and good luck for the rest of your day. You're over halfway there. Keep going.
Yeah.